You've heard the term starving artist. Would you like to meet two artists who seem to be able to make a go of it with their creativity? Stay with us and meet them next on Lakeshore Focus.
Programming is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.
Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. Art is essential, and it allows people to creatively express themselves in many forms, especially those who are strongly passionate about it. How often are people able to get the opportunity to make a career with what they truly love? How do you build a career and make a living in the field of art? On this show, we have two extremely talented women who are doing just that and pursuing their dreams. Liz Maris, who is a contemporary artist, and Leona Jurincie, who is a freelance artist, and her business is called Artistic Realism. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you.
So, I'm not sure that you guys look like artists, but what are artists supposed to look like? Is there a stereotype out there for that?
I think so.
Yeah,
what do you think?
usually kind of weird looking, you know,
Yeah.
funky hats and funky clothes.
Just the eccentrics
So
of
how
the
come
world.
you guys aren't in that category? Although I like the shoes.
Oh,
but they're not
thanks.
that
That's about as eccentric as I get, I guess. And sometimes my hair will get wild on its own, but I think it's pretty calm right now.
I think it's better when you're as an artist and no one knows you are, and then they see your work and your work speaks for itself. For me, works better.
Yeah.
And they go, oh my gosh, I didn't know you did this.
Yeah,
You get that?
all the time, all the
Yeah.
time.
I think it's interesting sometimes when I have people that'll tell me that, you know, they know that a female painted this, but
How do they know that?
That's a very good question, and I have absolutely no idea, but I think it's funny that I get that from people a lot.
I didn't know there's a difference between female and male art, other than when it's the subject matter, maybe.
Exactly. So, and I do heavy abstracts, so how people would say that to me is just kind of blows my mind a little
So
bit.
describe heavy abstract and what kind of art you do so our viewers figure that out.
Well, I focus predominantly with the lines, so I do a lot of clean lines, a lot of connections between them, a lot of bold and bright colors. There's really no clear pathway as far as what people would be like, oh, you know, that's like a landscape or something like that. It's just kind of is heavily based more with line and design.
So what kind of materials do you use in creating those?
I use a lot of different things. So I will use paint. Sometimes I use a lot of pen and ink. I'll use pencil. Pretty much whatever I can get my hands on is what I will work with.
Jelly, pudding, any of those kind of things? I mean, just
If it can
liquid?
sustain making art before I eat it, yeah, probably.
That's a good criteria.
Or you drip
Should
it.
should I eat this or use it? So Leona, how about you? Describe your
Oh
art
gosh,
for our
I'm on the
viewers.
total opposite of her. I'm a photorealistic artist. And I want it to look like you can pick it up or touch it or smell it. And I love everything from portraits to florals. And I just like painting and drawing.
So you try to do something that just looks like a photograph.
Better than a
Better than a
photograph.
photograph. How can you be better than a photograph?
I think that's the best compliment I've ever get, is it looks better than a photograph, because I change colors. I take things out of it that doesn't belong. I add things to make it more interesting. So I use my photography to get my subject matter, but then I manipulate it to look, I add colors into it that you can see it, but you really, you know, got to add a little bit or take some away. And
Does
to
a
me-
painting like that actually create more of a sense of three-dimension than just
yes,
a photograph?
Yeah, because you're taking away hard lines and adding softer lines and cool colors where they need to be just to make it pop out a little bit.
You guys are going to
So-
talk about some stuff today. I'm like, soft lines. I get the pop-out part.
And I also teach it. So I teach art also, painting and drawing and stuff, and it's just something I love doing. I love it when they get it, you know, and they understand what I'm talking about and they're not afraid of it anymore. and it keeps me out of trouble sometimes.
Well, part of the show, or the majority of the show, really was trying to kind of talk about art as a business, because again, I started off with that whole thing of starving artists, you know, people who go into art never make any money, you know, and you can't make a living on it. That's probably as advised by parents and grandparents to their children going off to school. Don't mess with this stuff. You'll never be able to afford to eat, right?
Get the day job.
So I want to kind of look at both your careers, which are in different places. Liz, you've kind of, in the past couple of years, it seems like you've kind of taken off with them. You're getting a lot of your art in Chicago and office buildings. And so what's happening with your career?
It's really been like this past year, it kind of just all exploded all together. And I have to say that it was pretty overwhelming in the beginning, because I was not used to that. But I kind of managed to get it all together, and just things kind of just blossomed from there, and it's just been wonderful. And since then, it seems to have springboarded me into this upcoming year and even into the next year, to where, you know, I can completely just go by my schedule and just be like, man, I have this, I have this, I have this, and I have this to do. And that's where you realize that the people that were telling you, don't go into this, don't do this, it's like, but it's all worth it now. I finally gotten here, I want to stay here, and I want to surpass this. And that's pretty much where it's taken me up until this point, just day by day by day.
So describe that moment that you kind of discovered that, oh, wow, this is really taken off for you. I mean, was there a moment where, particularly when the check came and you're like, holy cow, I can't believe somebody just paid me this.
It was actually before that, and it was, these people want this, they want all of this from me, and that's kind of when it hits you. It's like, okay, they said yes, now you go for it. Where before it was kind of like, oh, well, you know, maybe they want it, maybe they don't. I had some kind of times to finagle with different things, but when they say, yes, that's exactly what I want, run with it, it's kind of, you buckle down and you don't breathe for a little while. Yes. I guess you don't breathe until you get that check. You know?
Well, what was it like when you got that check?
Oh, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with it now? What am I going to buy? You know, it's like, but I just realized, it's like, you know, you were given this opportunity, you were given this check, so now you have to put it in and you have to keep going. This is now your start. You have really made it now. Now you just have to keep going with it and just grow.
Let the ball roll.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did your career kind of evolve for you, Leona?
It stops and goes. I'm just now at the age that I'm now.
which you won't reveal on camera. Okay.
I'm starting to get it going again, because life takes over. You become a mom and you're the wife, and then life throws you punches and you stop for a while and go again. And I'm starting again. And this year is my push-out year. And
what's a push-out year?
It's the year I decided to get back on track and be an artist and stop just floating through again. And, you know, things happen and you have to work through it. And I've worked through it. And so this year, I got into, I don't know if you heard of Art Prize. Mm-hmm. I got into that 2 years ago, and I've been working for my one-woman show for this September. It's going to be at the Center of Visual Performing Arts. And this is my jump out year. This is to get back into the art, and because I love it.
So what was the early part of your career like? Did you kind of jump into this back in your early days to say, I'm going to make a career of it, or not?
I think in the 90s, in the early 90s, I started painting. And
so you didn't study this necessarily?
I did. I went to the Art Institute for Advanced Drawing. I loved drawing the human form. And so I started there in my teens. And it just played with it. But it wasn't until the 90s I got serious about it, because, you know, it takes a couple of people to say, oh, I like it.
So were you in your 30s then?
I was in my late 30s, early 40s, in that area. So, I'm going to start doing the math now.
Yeah, but the math people and they're viewing this are going to go, I now know how old she is. But I think it's important for people to get a sense of how these careers go, and it's not there's any pattern.
By the time you're in your 30s, you start getting a little time for yourself. And you start thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? You know, I also have a full-time job. I work for South Shore Arts. And what a cool place to be at and being an artist. I've learned so much in my job of what's out there for artists. And I've decided now that I want it now.
So that's one of the career paths that I've seen is people are doing their art, but they have a job part-time
Yep.
or full-time in an art-related piece of it, like working in a
Yes.
theater or, you know, doing production or in a gallery or
best
something like
ones,
that.
yeah.
But Liz, did you do that before? Did you kind of do the job thing?
I did that before. So, but I'm also an esthetician, so I own my own practice, which I've kind of merged the two. So
So explain what an esthetician is.
I do skincare, so like facials and things like that. So that was another passion of mine, and since I merged the two, and you know, I just kind of work out of home. That's where my studio is based. That's where my business is based. Since I have like this influx of people coming in and out, it's like, well, why don't I turn it into a studio/spa room? And my clients really seem to emulate towards that. And you know, even when I'm doing my practice on them, and there's a portion where I do like masks, I use actual paintbrushes when I'm putting it on them. And you know, after they're done, they'll tell me, they're like, it's very, very interesting when you're putting the mask on my face that it actually feels like you're painting. It has these smooth movements that you're doing. They're like, that's so relaxing. So it's kind of tactile painting. So I get to paint on a live canvas, and they really, really resonate with that.
Wow, that's
That's
really
neat.
interesting, because I'm glad you explained it well, because I was imagining you were doing pen and ink on people's faces or something. I'm like,
Not yet.
where's she going with this? You know? So, you know, now that you brought that up about painting on people, what's both of your reaction? You see some of these live canvases where people literally paint on a nude person laying on a table.
Some of them are so cool.
Yeah, I think I mean, they have conventions for that.
Yeah. My favorite is when they match the background and then they move.
Yeah.
You didn't even know they were there. I mean, that's a whole new skill because you got to paint fast.
So you don't see any exploitation in that.
Oh, hell no, use it.
Okay. Okay, so it's art to you.
It's art, yeah.
It's creativity. It's like
Yeah.
somebody thought of this. It's like this is
It's a
kind of,
whole other skill. And it keeps me, I don't know about you, it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
That's why I love teaching. My students, they bring trouble to me, problems that they're having, and I have to troubleshoot. And I'm always learning. I love going to workshops and learning from other people to see how I need to change what I'm doing in my workshops or try something new with materials that are out there. And going to the conventions as an artist, it just keeps you fresh, and it keeps you looking forward to not being a hermit. Because you can very easily be a hermit being an artist, being stuck in the house.
So give me the same question I asked Liz before. When did you get, you know, paid something that you're like, holy cow, I can't believe somebody paid me for this, and this is pretty neat?
I think one of the first paintings I sold was an aunt, and she wanted me to do, that was in my late 20s, she wanted me to do a painting of her village in Europe, and I knew I couldn't do it, but she felt I could, and she's the one who started the ball rolling for me, Auntie Anne. And that
And she paid you
village,
for this?
she paid me for it. She insisted on me doing it, and I did it, and it looked like the village. And that's when I thought, hey, maybe I got skills, you know. And that started it. And then other people started asking me. So it was just little here and there. And then as I grew as a professional, doing portraits of animals and people, and that's when I discovered it's not. I love doing it. I love painting.
Well, the self-satisfaction has to be kind of the driving force for you in the early stages of doing this.
Yeah.
But at some point, it turns into a business a little bit. I mean, where you go, I need to be able to make some money at doing this.
Right.
So how has that been for you, Liz? I mean, is it just accidentally happened? Is it a miracle? Is it?
It didn't accidentally happen. I mean, I've been working consistently at it for like the last 5 years. So you're just kind of always building art, always building, you know, for exhibitions, for different things like that. Even if you don't have them set in stone yet, you're just always thinking that step ahead. So when somebody does come to you and says, hey, you know, I have this exhibit that I need filled, you know, last minute, do you have something? Boom, I have something, can go and hang it up. Or if somebody comes to me and say that they want like 5 or 6 pieces for their corporate office downtown.
That happened to you, didn't it?
It did happen to me. So, you know, I need these, do you have them? yes, I have them. I'll show you, and then it still kind of gives you some leeway, like, okay, maybe I want one or two more. You know, it's like, all right, well, I have the time to do it, and it's just, you have to constantly be ready for it, I think. That's really, really, really what's going to get you going, is to have things for people.
There's no common path to this, it doesn't seem like. So maybe, again, for our viewers, could you talk about maybe somebody else who's had kind of a different journey than you've had?
Well, it's the networking. You can't just sit in your studio. You have to, and like now, like this year, by September, I have to have a website up, a new Facebook page for my business, because my opening is October 1st. So I have to get my stuff ready and lined up. And so it's work. So you have to work at it. You have to get out there. You have to put your name out there, do demos, go to shows and openings of other artists, and see what's out there, and constantly put yourself in the forefront. And it's painting every day. Not just because I don't feel like it, I'm not going to paint. It's a business. So you paint every day.
So that's the opposite of I think some people's visualization of the artist who sequesters himself in their apartment and just furiously paints forever and never lets anybody see it, or just, it's rare that they go out.
You go through so many feelings. You don't want to be bad. You want to be good at what you do. Sometimes you're your worst critic. Sometimes you're your best critic. And I think that has a lot to do with being an artist. But when you make it a business and you work on it every day, because the minute I turn my living room and dining room into my studio and gallery. So I eat dinner, change my clothes, I sit down, I'm in the studio.
You're going to have discipline to do this.
You have to have, because if you don't, you're very easily taken away. And with me, it's taken 2 years to get ready for this show, because all my pieces are new. And because I work in so many different mediums, that'll be awesome. So I don't have to just stick to oils. I can use my other mediums.
So Liz, have you seen that model of the person, and we can go beyond just the physical art, I mean, a musician or somebody who's trying to compose music or write or something, and they, again, don't get this business thing, and do you see them as pretty frustrated, or what do you say to those people when they're complaining and whining?
Well, I think I was that person when I started off. So art is very soulful. So, you know, you're putting a lot of yourself into what you're doing. So that leaves you very vulnerable. So when you go out and you're like, oh, well, you know, I have these works or I have this piece of music, but I haven't shared it with anybody yet, and I don't know, you know, and I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, is they don't want to put themselves out there so they can be criticized. Most people will think the negative before they think the positive.
How'd you overcome that? Because, you know, I know you have a lot of your own work in the place you live. So if somebody comes in there and just kind of looks at it and goes, well, whatever. I mean, how do you?
It just kind of took a lot of growing up, you know? It just kind of toughened my skin.
Tough
you know?
skin.
Yeah, you just kind of have to toughen it. And now I kind of look forward to what people's opinions are. You know, I will ask them, be like, oh, what do you think? And, you know, they can be as vague or as in-depth as they want to be. It's just knowing that they're not saying anything to you to try and hurt your feelings.
Right.
You ask them, and honesty is always the best.
How'd you get that tough skin?
I like my work. And I know
So
I'm
no
still
matter
growing.
what anybody else thinks,
You
I
have
like
to
my work.
please yourself. And I think that once you please yourself, you're not always going to please everybody. Everyone has an opinion. And no matter what the work is, even very contemporary work, I can look at shadows and colors and see something pleasant in that. So it just depends on who you are. And as far as I'm concerned, well, I always have room to grow, get better, or loosen up.
So how much of the business is the confidence that the buyer or the art critic
The business
has of
is
you,
huge.
just kind of looking at you and going, you seem comfortable with what you're doing, so that appeals to me?
Well, it's not just that, it's getting the paperwork done ahead of time, so that if you approach me or I approach you, I can go into my office and pull out a file and give you a database of my work. And I can show you everything that I've done in the past. My resume is ready, everything is ready. And if I go to teach a workshop in a business, all the homework is done for my students. They don't have to take notes. I took it for them, wrote it down, and gave them swatches of colors to use, how to mix those colors, and where those colors are going to be. My goal is to be the best artist in person, whether it's as an artist myself or teaching that I can be.
Okay.
And make it easy.
So let me ask you, I'm not sure how to ask this question, Liz, but you'll kind of know where I'm going with it. So I've gone to galleries before, and you walk through and everybody's looking at stuff and someone says, "Are you kidding? They want $1,000 for that?"
Yeah.
I mean, so kind of how do you deal with that, or where do you come up with the pricing, and why do some people think their stuff's worth $5,000, other people think it's worth $50,000?
I think it has to do based on your experiences and based on your past sales points. I kind of got lucky to where when mine sold at this asking price, that kind of set the bar for me. So now I know, well, there are buyers out there that pay this amount, so this is where my base price would be. And just kind of as you gain more experience and you get more exposure, then your price points can go up from there. But you have to be realistic as well. You have to know that if you've just come out of art school, and even though you may have painted this amazing painting, you're not going to get $10,000 for it.
And you have to look at your dynamics of where you're at and who you're selling it to. And people also got to remember too, we don't get paid for the hours that we put into our artwork. The gallery, if you're in a gallery, can take anywhere from 40 to 60% of what your price is. And now you have to take out what it cost you to put the materials together. So
sometimes your time boils
it
down
never,
to not as much for
it never does.
Well, it's amazing that we're down to the end of the show. So one of the things I'd like each of you to, for that budding artist or that person who's put it on the back shelf out there for 20 years and been thinking about bringing it back up, what piece of advice in the last minute do you guys have to that person? What would you say to them?
Don't stress out about it. Don't try to be perfect, because nobody is perfect. Just try to find a mentor if that's the road you kind of want to go down. Ask questions.
Work every day. Don't just do it on the weekends. Take a couple of hours, at least 2 to 3 hours a day, and work on it. Become better.
So jump in there and do it. That's part of it, right?
Yep.
So if just not only commit the time, but you got to get back in there. You got to get on the horse.
You
right?
you got to get to it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being here. I really hope this touches people who are, because there's a lot of people out there who I think want to be successful in that.
Yes.
And I think
Get
your
a group.
advice is good.
Get a group. There's so many clubs out there, but get positive people around you.
Exactly.
Good piece of advice.
Yeah.
So thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I'll
you for
look
having
forward
me.
to seeing your stuff. I've seen yours, but I'm going to look forward to seeing yours.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're standing in front of a painting, or hearing someone talk about a great work of fiction, or listening to a street musician wailing on a saxophone. The person next to you says, "I could never do that. I don't have a creative bone in my body." Maybe you are the one who said it. I think all of us can be creative. Some just have it more than others, and some have learned how to use it. Everyone can create. What is creativity? It's simply making something. It can start with what you have or with nothing at all. Music is a series of sounds, whether they come from your mouth or an instrument. In fact, we have people who use something as unusual as an armpit for melody and as simple as clacking 2 spoons together for rhythm. A series of lines and shapes may be produced with a common pencil or crayons, paint and brush, fabric and string, chalk and sidewalk. Words placed in order or scattered can result in a poem, lyric, greeting card, or story. Although I have primarily focused on the usual realms of creativity like art, music, and writing, how about the arenas of cooking, welding, landscaping, decorating, or throwing a ball? Any activity where you produce something can be done in a creative way. Putting a different set of edible ingredients together or combining them in an unusual way can result in the discovery of dishes to please the palate. Trying to assemble metals with an untried method or with uncommon tools or fasteners could bring a new product to reality. You don't have to place the bushes, flowers, bulbs, rocks, pavers, and yard ornaments the same way everyone else does. Do it your way. Who says decorating involves crepe paper, signs, and balloons? Try empty cans, strips of fabric, dried leaves and sand. It might be a mess, but it's creative. Even the way a ball is thrown can be changed. How do you think we got the curveball, the Hail Mary pass, bowling balls, or a plastic orb with holes in it, which we called a wiffle ball? All of those took creativity. I think the difference is simple. Some people try and others don't. There are individuals who work at it, practice, and eventually become pretty good or excellent at whatever they are trying to make. I know you've heard this one, two people standing in front of a piece of art. It's an unusual array of chains, plastic milk jugs, tree limbs, and feathers. It's interesting, thoughtful, appealing. It's creative. One of the viewers remarks, "I could have made that." The other one responds, "But you didn't." There it is. One does and the other does not. Could it be that simple? Let's go back to the idea of that creative bone in our body. We all have one. Some people do have a larger one, but the real difference is some people use theirs. We hope you enjoyed this show and have learned something about art and artists. We appreciate our viewers, whether they watch Focus at our regular broadcast time or consume it via the web. No matter how you access the show, we would like to hear your comments and thoughts. You can reach us through our email address or website, both listed on your screen. Be sure and join us again next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.
Is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.